pockets. Do you admit that you could have been braver in targeting the wealthiest in Britain?
As I've said, I do recognise that we are asking everyone to make a contribution for the security of our country and the brightness of its future. I said that in the speech today, and I also said in the speech today that I'm not going to pretend that that is not asking for a contribution. The Tories, when they were in office, froze the thresholds and said nothing to see here. I'm being open and honest that that is, from 2028, freezing thresholds for a bit longer, and that does have a cost. But we're putting money now in the pockets of working people with £150 off their bills, money off of rail fares, of frozen prescription charges, as well as fully funding the childcare offer of 30 hours of free childcare for preschool children, more free school meals for 500,000 kids whose parents are on universal credit, rolling out universal breakfast clubs at all primary schools. All these things about putting money in the pockets of ordinary working people, as well as the increases in the national minimum wage and the national living wage that I've set out today. But look, you can see the distribution analysis tables in the budget documentation that came out today. This is a highly progressive budget. The biggest winners are those on the lowest incomes, and those who were asking to pay more are those with the broadest shoulders, those who have properties worth more than £2 million. The landlord who pays less tax than their tenant. Those are the right things to do, and they're progressive reforms. And because of that, we've managed to keep the contribution from working people as low as possible. Dan, from Politico.
Hello, Chancellor. A lot of the tax rises that more than half of the income to the Treasury from the tax rises you've announced today actually takes effect, sort of comes in after the next general election in sort of 2030, 2031. Do you think it's credible to suggest that this will definitely happen? And given things are so volatile in politics, will you still be Chancellor then?
I don't think anything comes in that late, actually. So the freezes are 28, 29 onwards. The council tax surcharge comes in a couple of years' time, as does the other changes. So these are all coming in within this Parliament. When you're making tax reform, it's often not possible to change those rates overnight. And of course, the thresholds are towards the end of the Parliament because the Tories already froze them. But we're also making savings right now through getting rid of things like police and crime commissioners, reducing the cost of local government with fewer councillors, as well as selling land that the government no longer has a need for. So there are savings we're making right now, as well as asking public services to make efficiency savings worth a further 0.5% from 28-29. So these are, and what you see actually in the forecast is the deficit coming down every single year, because I think it is important to show that we are consolidating. We're not going to be spending more than we can afford, and the IMF, I believe, have confirmed that we have the fastest rate of consolidation of our public finances of any country in the G7. I'm afraid I can do one more. Thank you, Phoebe. She's the real boss. Yeah.
Anna Mihailova, Times Radio. A year ago, after a big tax-raising budget, you said you would not be coming back for more taxes. You've just announced £26 billion worth of tax rises, including dragging hundreds of thousands of people into basic rate income tax, nearly 1 million people into higher rate tax. Can you now tell people, reassure people, you will not be back for more?
Well, look, last year I had to fill the £22 billion black hole in the public finances left by the Conservatives. What we didn't know then, as well as that black hole in the public finances, that actually productivity growth was weaker than the Office of Budget Responsibility then forecast. They've been really clear in their documentation today, available before the budget, that productivity forecast based on the past is now expected to be 0.3 percentage points lower a year. That hits growth to the same amount and reduces tax revenues by £16 billion a year. And although I believe that we can beat those forecasts, we've beat them this year. The OBR said the economy was going to grow by 1% this year. We've grown it by 1.5%. and I'm determined we'll beat the forecasts again. The Conservatives' legacy is not our country's destiny, but we also all know, because we've experienced it just 3 years ago, that if you ignore the forecasts, you pay a huge price in the cost of government borrowing, and then by implication the cost of borrowing for ordinary families through their mortgages. We've had 5 cuts in interest rates since I became Chancellor of the Exchequer, taking an average of £1,200 off a new mortgage. I am not going to risk the instability that we had under the Conservatives with our public finances or family finances, and that's why I have asked people to pay more. I can't write future budgets, but if you are asking, is this a budget I wanted to deliver today? Well, I would have rather the circumstances were different. But as Chancellor, I don't get to choose my inheritance, and I have to live in the world as it is, not the one that I might like it to be. And I believe that I made the fair and the necessary choices given the fiscal circumstances. I'm afraid that's all that I'm sorry. I think that's all that we've got time for this afternoon. But thank you very much, everybody, for coming along, and thank you particularly for the staff here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right.